Hi, this is Dr. Padma Garvey. Thanks for tuning in. This is the second in a series that I'm going to be doing featuring tofu. Previously, I did an episode featuring tofu and cabbage in a stir-fry dish. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make a more Western-style dish using tofu marsala with green beans and baked potatoes. You'll see that tofu is a great substitute for dishes that typically use chicken, pork, or even fish. For today's dish, I'm going to use some firm tofu. In my previous episode with the stir fry, I had used extra firm tofu and I froze it and thawed it. But for today's dish, I picked up some firm tofu and I didn't freeze it. I just grabbed it from the grocery store on the way home from work. And I'm doing this to get you to try the various different kinds of tofu that are out there. Whether you like extra firm tofu or firm tofu, it's really a taste preference. And whether you like to freeze and thaw your tofu or just use it straight out of the packet is also a taste preference. When you take the tofu out, you're going to notice right away that the firm tofu is a little bit softer than the extra firm tofu. You're going to wrap each of the blocks of tofu in clean kitchen towels, and you're going to let this rest on your counter for about 30 minutes. While that's happening, you're going to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Rinse some potatoes with the skin, throw them in the oven, and let them start baking as well. For the marsala, you're going to get some green scallions chopped. You'll need about a cup's worth. You'll need to coarsely chop a large box of baby portobello mushrooms that have been washed and dried. And I have a kitchen gadget that I love to use for quick, fast, coarse chopping. I think I picked this up at Bed Bath & Beyond. And I take each of the baby bella mushrooms, cut them in half, and place 4 halves on the chopping block here and press gently, and you get a nice, quick, coarse chop. I like a lot of mushrooms for this dish. Mushrooms are a great source of protein, so I'm going to use about 3 to 4 cups of chopped mushrooms for this. Next, you can take the tofu out of the kitchen towels and you're going to cut them to pieces that are roughly the size of a piece of chicken or a piece of fish. After you've cut them into these pieces, you're going to arrange them on a baking dish. For baking tofu, I like to use a baking dish that has holes on the bottom. That way the hot air can circulate all around the pieces of tofu and you get more even cooking. So once you've put the tofu on the baking dish, you can place it in the oven at 350 along with your baking potatoes. And it'll take about 45 minutes for this tofu to be ready. Next, I'm going to get some garlic ready for my marsala dish. And I'm going to thinly slice about 3 cloves of garlic for the marsala dish. You'll also need some 4 or 5 sprigs of thyme. This is from my garden. You can also use dried thyme. You'll need some marsala cooking wine, some extra virgin olive oil, and you'll need some Earth Balance butter substitute, or what I like to use is Earth Balance coconut spread. It has a very rich, creamy texture like butter, and it does not taste like coconut. Also, for this dish, I recommend using Vegemite, which I got through Amazon. It gives dishes a meaty, beefy flavor and is a great flavor enhancer. You'll also need some 3 to 4 bay leaves for the marsala dish. For the green beans, I got some green beans from my garden this morning. I rinsed them, and I'm going to chop off the hard end and get them ready. I'm also going to coarsely chop about half a cup of unsalted raw walnuts. Walnuts have a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, so I love using them in my dishes. And for the green beans, I'm going to roughly chop 1 clove of garlic. For the green beans, I'm going to take a small wok, heat it at medium heat, and put half a tablespoon of olive oil. Once that's heated nicely, I'm going to add my walnuts to the oil and let them get coated and start browning. Once they've started to brown nicely, I'm going to add the garlic that I chopped up for the green beans and stir that around and let that start cooking. Oil does extract flavors. I also add some crushed red pepper flakes to my green beans. You can leave this out if you don't like your food spicy. I love my food spicy, so I'm going to put some in. And I'm going to put the green beans and stir that. I'm going to add a couple of pinches of salt and some pinches of black pepper as well and get this going. Oil does extract flavors from garlic and nuts, but you don't need a lot of oil. You can finish the cooking process of your vegetables with water and let the vegetables steam for the rest of the cooking process. So I just use a little bit of oil to extract the flavors from the garlic and get everything coated with it. But in order to really finish the cooking process, I put about half a cup of water, stir vigorously, and cover for about 10 minutes. And that usually produces tender but crisp green beans. And once that's done, I take that off the heat, set that aside. Now I'm going to work on the tofu marsala. You'll need a large skillet on medium heat. Add a teaspoon of the Earth Balance coconut spread, as well as half a tablespoon of olive oil. As I said, this is on medium heat. And once that starts to melt, you're going to add your crushed garlic and let that start to sizzle nicely. And then you're going to add your scallions and give everything a nice stirring and let everything heat up. You're going to cover this for a few minutes so that the scallions start to wilt. After a few minutes, you can uncover and add your mushrooms. You're also going to add several pinches of salt and several generous pinches of crushed black pepper and get this going. The salt and the heat is going to get a lot of water to come out of the mushrooms, which is good because it's going to produce the broth that you want. Then you can add your thyme and your bay leaves. And a cup of red wine, or a cup of marsala wine, and mix thoroughly. Cover and let the alcohol cook off a bit. Next, you're going to take the lid off and add a tablespoon of the Vegemite. As I said, this really does give dishes a very beefy, meaty flavor. It's a real flavor enhancer. The tofu should be out of the oven at this point, should be about 45 minutes, and using a very good spatula, carefully remove the tofu cutlets so as not to tear them. And you can then place each cutlet in your marsala skillet and make sure that you mix all the ingredients well so that each tofu cutlet gets coated with the broth and gets a chance to absorb the broth. And you might actually need to add a half a cup of water so that you increase the volume of the liquid so that all the tofu pieces can get coated and covered nicely. And cover this for several minutes, and after several minutes the dish should be ready to serve. The tofu should absorb a lot of the broth and the flavor should really come together. You can then serve the tofu marsala with your baked potato and green beans. The dish this is really a very tasty, nutritious meal, and I made this in about an hour.